Hello, I'm Scott Clover, and you're listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast. This podcast series is about intuition, healing, and creating new energetic patterns that benefit you in your daily life. In my private practice, I help people heal from a diverse range of issues, including self-acceptance, trauma release, managing anxiety, emboldening self-worth, and creative expression. In this episode, we talk about how to mind your own energy, the importance of boundaries, how to have healthier relationships with others. We also discuss narcissistic entanglement and what it's like to feel independent in your own energy body. Enjoy.
Carl Munson here, talking to Scott Clover, intuitive energy healer in New York. I'm in Portugal, and we've had a number of lovely conversations which you might want to listen to in the back catalogue. And we're starting with the subject of minding your own energy, which is a bit like minding your own business, but on an energetic level, Scott.
Yeah, that's a really nice description of it. Very concise, and the brain sort of understands how that works when you say it that way.
How do you do it?
How do you mind your own energy? You first realize that you may be bleeding out into other people's fields. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people out there that want to do good. There's a lot of people out there that have a compulsion almost to help other people. And sometimes that compulsion takes over and they don't help themselves first. So they'll go into a room, or they'll go into a family situation, or they'll go into a work environment, and they'll feel energetically that somebody in the room or somebody in the meeting needs them. So they'll take it upon themselves to interject their energy or their advice or their time and energy into someone else's issue, and they weren't even asked. Right? It can be somewhat intrusive for someone who has the gumption to heal to just automatically want to heal without permission.
Have they learned to do that all their lives and they're just repeating that unconsciously?
It can be a childhood pattern. It can be an archetypal pattern, meaning you have a Samaritan archetype, or there's some part of you that really wants to reach out and be the avenger or the liberator. These are all valid archetypes that people hold inside themselves.
Yeah.
But if an avenger meets in a destroyer archetype, then you have some issues, or you have some complacency issues in that one will take advantage of the other.
Yeah.
And the circle of life is that you have somebody who is needy and somebody who wants to serve. And that can be a very wonderful cycle in like a coupling. If you and your partner have this sort of yin-yang reciprocal energy that she cooks and you do the dishes, or you do the dishes after she does an event, that can be a reciprocal give and take about using your strengths and weaknesses to support one another. Yeah. But in most situations, I find, and with a lot of my clients, it's that they have this repeated pattern that comes from childhood, whether their parent was an alcoholic or abusive, or we talk about this a lot, a narcissistic parent. Mm-hmm. Then the child, through trauma, through having to live with these traumatic events of having to deal with the inabilities of their parents, they become overly giving, or they want to fill in the blanks when they see a blank because they feel like it's their role, or they should. And there isn't always a should if you stop and you take a look at what's really happening. If you take a breath and say, this is the situation that I'm in. I came from a household that XYZ was either overly supportive, so I feel like I'm entitled, or was under-supported, which means you feel like you need to go out there and blast your energy all over to get recognition.
Wow.
So say you have a parent who's an alcoholic, or a parent who's an ACA, which is an adult child of an alcoholic. So if your grandparent was an alcoholic, then your parent isn't going to have the same capacities to interact with you that a parent who didn't have a parent who was an alcoholic would.
I didn't even know about that category of people.
Oh yeah, adult children of alcoholics is a almost distinct pattern of behavior.
Wow.
That people who have suffered through that go through in life. And it becomes an inability to have boundaries.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about here across the line. Where however you grew up, supported or unsupported, your boundaries need to be resecured. They need to be reevaluated from an adult perspective to say, wow, am I overtaking? Am I sort of taking advantage of my friends who have different lifestyle qualities to mine, that if they ask me for a favor, I take advantage of them? Or are you one of those people who just all of a sudden asks anyone out there for help and they don't even know you? That can become just as obtrusive to people who aren't in the normal relationships that understand, oh, this person is overgiving because they don't have self-control over it.
Yeah.
They haven't allotted the time or energy to define what their boundaries are. So then they supersede their boundaries all the time. They can be exhausted, and they can also be exhausting.
And we live in a historically Christian context, don't we? Where the whole messaging is it's nice to help people. And we should, like you said, you use the should, we should on each other, don't we? And we should on ourselves. And there's this assumption that we should help other people if they need help. So that's a kind of validation, isn't it, of being a good person. But we also know that no good deed goes unpunished, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions and those things as well. So we kind of know, but it's understanding, isn't it, when it starts to cost you? And that's what I want to ask you about. So we're talking about boundaries here, as you've said. So how do you know when it is costing you, or you're either overgiving or you're the sort of person that's overtaking? How is that going to manifest in your life, and maybe a little pointer to do something about it?
Sure. Well, first I'd like to comment on those colloquials that you just said, those expressions. Those exist for a reason. Those exist because these dichotomies and these interactions have existed for eons. Right? So that's where those phrases come from. Those phrases come from real life interactions repeated over and over and over generations, right? So first you can do is take a look at your own yard, is the way I look at it. So I have a description of this in that, say you have a house downtown of a little town, and your house is downtown, and they change the parade route for the Independence Day parade, and it goes right in front of your house. So all the locals and all the people from the small towns around you come and they hang out on your front yard and they watch the parade. Well, after they leave, there's cups and garbage and wrappers and old diapers, whatever the crowd decided to leave there. It is now your responsibility. You didn't ask for that crowd to stay in front of your house to watch the parade. They weren't overly responsible or saying, oh, I can't wait to shit in this guy's yard and mess it all up. They were just going about their sort of group-mindedness. So now the next day comes and you got crap in your yard. You got to pick it up. It's now your responsibility. Regardless of how it got there, whether it was intended or not intended, that's no longer the question. The question is, it's there, and do you want to keep garbage in your yard, or it's now your responsibility to pick it up? So that's the first thing I would say, is to sort of mind how it got there and take away some of the responsibility. Take away some of the blame and the shaming of the person that may have done it, or how you got wrapped up in it. Because once you're wrapped up in a situation like this, it is now your responsibility to take care of it. So the one thing I would say is mind your own energy. See where your energy fields may be bleeding into other people. See where you may have over pushed to help someone when they honestly didn't want your help. We have the stereotype of the pushy neighbor.
Yes.
Well, sometimes the pushy neighbor is just somebody who's overly helpful and you don't feel like entertaining their help.
Yeah. Are over-concerned citizens in that category as well? They
can be, sure. Well, they can be lonely and have nothing else to do, so they make other people's business their own.
Yeah.
Well, no one really cares for that.
No, certainly not.
Energetic dynamic.
Not a term of endearment, is it?
Not over long terms. Right. But self-awareness is also important, right? Yeah. Mothers, take a look at how you've given to your children over the years. And if you're empty nesters, how are you still connected to these people?
Yeah.
And is it positive for them? Is it positive for you? Who's getting their feelings hurt?
Yeah.
On purpose. I have several clients who are now stuck with their husbands in the house after the husbands have retired. And they complain about the husband's actions and how he acts and reacts to certain specific situations. And I think because they're spending more time together, It's more predominant. And I have to say, wait a minute, you've been living with this man for 30, 40 years. It's now your responsibility to admit this is how he acts. This isn't coming out of nowhere. You've known for 30, 40 years this person is cantankerous or grumpy about food or things like that. Yeah. So you have to stop and take some responsibility to say, I have let this go on for years in my relationship, and I have to accept the fact that that's who this person is. So that's, once again, minding your own energy, accepting other people for who they are so you can accept yourself for who you are.
That's so interesting, Scott. This is an amazing homework for people, isn't it, if they want it, to consider this. And it's okay, isn't it, to ask for, is to request how you would like the other person to be without necessarily guilting them, or because it's got to work for both people, hasn't it? And it's really beautiful how you're putting it, because it's a very subtle business, isn't it, of matching energies and making the relationship work for both people. So these sorts of intelligent discussions between those two people are obviously very important. Do you think it's okay?
And I would say interactions too. I would say interactions with dyads, with two people, not necessarily long-term couples, but work partners or best friends or colleagues. However you interact with another individual or group is important.
Just check. Right? So check all of those then. Have a look.
Check all of those. Yeah.
Wow.
So one exercise we can do together real quick is, and don't do this if you're driving or riding a bicycle. Do this in the calmness of your own state.
Yeah.
But just imagine yourself on a cute little hill on a pasture somewhere, a nice spring day. And just imagine you have an energy ball around you, a big, beautiful ball of energy around you. And as you imagine that, and if you're inside the ball and you open your eyes, what color do you land upon? What color is the inside lining of your energy bubble that you're seeing?
I've got some white with a kind of yellow golden tinge.
Okay, so yours is white with a yellow golden tinge. It could be someone else's, could be anything.
Yeah.
So now if I see, there's Carl's energy bubble in that pasture and I'm 40 feet away, what color am I seeing on the outside?
I'm seeing black and gray from the outside.
Right? So how you think you are on the inside is not necessarily how you're portraying yourself to others on the outside.
Oh dear, I've been exposed now, it feels like. But all for the...
I've heard all different color combinations. Yes. Really? Yeah. So the idea of this, a quick exercise, is to say, now, what if you toggled those two? What if you brought the energy color from the outside on the inside level and switched the one to the outside, switch the inside to the outside?
Yeah.
That makes people all squirrely and squiggly because they're reacting in a way to exterior forces that they're not used to.
Yeah. It's not easy, that.
No, it can't. It can be for some, but then they don't like staying there.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not their go-to, right? But they can do it. But most people that do it, they get a little squirrely. So then I ask in the end of this exercise is to take the white and the yellow of yours on the inside, whatever color your inside bubble is, and just meld it with the outside color. Merge the two, like coffee and cream coming together to create a third color.
Got it.
And as you do that, you may even feel your body relax a little bit.
I do.
Yeah. It's a good exercise.
That's so much more pleasant than the complete, polar opposite contrast version.
Yours was contrasting. Other people's can be somewhat complementary, but somewhat still different colors. And very rarely, but I have seen people that have the same colors, which is telling in its own right.
Yeah.
But it's just an exercise for you to understand that how you feel you interact with the world and how the world interacts with you. That's an energetic, visual way you can do on your own to see that maybe you're not as congruous with the world as you think you might be.
Guilty as charged, it would appear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So these are kinds of things that I do in my practice to help people understand how and why they have interacted with the outside world in ways that don't serve them.
Okay, so that's what I want to ask you. You run a practice. You're an intuitive energy healer. Someone hearing this thinks, "Yeah, I get it. I'm overgiving or I'm overtaking." what do you do with those people? What's the next step when they've recognized that and they come and see you or someone like you? Is it a matter of balancing and fixing that?
It's a matter of boundaries.
Yeah.
It's a matter of appropriate boundaries for yourself.
Yes.
I mean, I've been in the healing world a long time now, and I've heard every phrase adapted to this of put your own oxygen mask on first before you put on the person's next to you. I've heard you can't serve from an empty bowl.
Yes.
Right? If you've depleted your bowl of stew and you still have to eat and you've given all your stew away, well, you can't serve from an empty bowl. There's several of these catchphrases that coin this term of I'm overgiving. And generally the overgivers notice it more than the overtakers, I will say.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, the overtakers will be like, oh shit, I might be overtaking. But that's more rare than the people like, I'm exhausted and I don't know why. I've spent the week helping everyone around me and forgot to help myself, and I can't figure out why I'm tired.
Yeah.
So these are things that happen. And then once again, it happens from conditioning of childhood and how you interacted to the world and how the world interacted with you from a young age into adolescence and then ultimately into your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said before, when we've talked, 55%
observation is 55% of the game. Yeah. Once you can
right.
observe these patterns in yourself and understand them realistically, then you've got a real chance of changing them for the better.
Yeah, that really made an impact on me. And I've shared that subsequently. There's something I want to ask you, if I may. And it's about, I'd like to think in the last year and meeting you and talking to you and working with you, I've had some success, healing, breakthroughs in my life. And the first bit I think we discussed before, where I thought I was healed and fixed and that was it. And I didn't need to do any more. And obviously that was, that was wishful thinking.
Oh, I probably struck that one down real quick.
You did. You put me straight. You put me straight on that. But the other, there's not only the layers of healing, but there's also how some people are stronger in some areas of their lives than others. So you can make really good progress in one part, and it might be in setting boundaries, but another part might be a complete disaster. Why is that? How can we be? How is it that healing takes place in a kind of, in a wheel of life? Sometimes you're 10 on something, sometimes you're a 1 on something. Do you see that in people?
Okay, let me use sort of a visual.
Okay.
So everyone evoke childhood imagination here, where I say creation meets intention and imagination, right? And I want you to just imagine the person you're speaking about, or you can think about yourself, has maybe a colored rainbow that comes off their body, right? So they've got a red layer and a yellow and orange and blue and purple layer. And all these layers come out over their body. And one layer has to do with interactions with someone they may be romantic with. One may be with their friends. One may be with people of the opposite sex. One may be with people that are in power. And I think of it as those Russian dolls, those dolls that are inside another doll, inside another doll, inside another doll. If you imagine that a whole person has a radiant energy field of all those rainbow colors on the outside of their body, that person doesn't exist, by the way. That person does not exist. Because we're all humans and we've all grown up and had idiosyncratic things happen to us that may have squandered or shaped those energy fields around you, but they didn't let them grow. So they're like one of the smallest dolls inside the game. And if your energy field for interacting with lovers, for example, if that got squandered or traumatized at a very young age, or the first time you went to ask somebody out and it didn't work so well, or you just aren't good with the opposite sex or whoever you're interested in, then that got sort of stuck in place or frozen as one of the smaller dolls. It's one of the smaller energy fields in your body. So it never came outside the body to interact with the world appropriately. So it's sort of an immature pattern that never got allowed to grow up. And a lot of times when we experience trauma as children, whatever that trauma revolves around, that pattern can get locked in at a smaller size inside of our bodies, so it doesn't interact as welcomingly as it could with the outside world. So you could be really bold in business, but be really bad with women, for example. Or you could be a woman who doesn't have any female friends and it only hangs out with male friends, because when you got that energy pattern going in elementary school, the girls were mean to you. Yeah. And it caused you just some holes in that energy field that said, I'm not going to grow that muscle.
Yes.
I'm going to grow that muscle and become a tomboy and hang out with boys. And then to come to think of it, now you're in your 30s and you go out with men all the time as friends because you don't know how to associate with women. You may have been traumatized by a group of girls when you were a child. That's just an example. So that Russian doll is stuck inside your body and doesn't express herself outside your body. If you had, a miscarriage before you were able to conceive, before you were able to have a child, then you have some energy around what being a mother is and how your body reacts to that process. If you were a boy being teased in middle school, then you don't feel safe around other men. Mm. So you have to really look inside yourself and say, wow, these things happened to me.
Yeah.
Where did my energy get stymied? Where did it stop growing? And how can I go there and find it inside myself and feed it like a protein shake? How can I take it to the gym? How can I make it stronger and bigger and expand it out? So the energy actually leaves your energy fields outside your body, which is how they're interacted with by others.
Yes, yes. And something that occurred to me when you were explaining that is part of it is preferences, isn't it? How we are, and some people are good at things and not other things, and some people have more male friends and female friends and so on. But there's a distinction here, isn't there? That it's not just about appropriateness and preference. There may be a stark contrast, or it's something that's quite obviously a little bit out of balance that you're talking about, right?
Well, yeah, it's like somebody who grows up with one leg shorter than the other.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious to notice somebody's walking with a limp because their leg is shorter than the other.
Yeah.
Well, energetically, that's kind of the way I sense it in people. When I interact with a client who's asking for help and they come to me and ask for it, I don't go out there and try and serve the world as much as I used to, because I found myself, I got too depleted because I helped everybody, whether they asked me or not. So I'm still learning my own boundaries as an empath.
Yes.
And as a healer. But since it's my profession, I try to keep my boundaries pretty stringent, because that serves, I think, the community at large, as an example.
I'm sure. Yeah. Are we part of a growing awareness, just using the word empath? I think more people are aware of what that means. And do you feel that that's a bigger issue, and more people coming to see you to manage that sort of energy or to understand it even?
I think it's imperative going forward, because collectively we're going to collectively in the future, in Star Trek times.
Yeah.
We understand that we are individuals who serve a community which serves us.
Yeah.
And if we maintain the me generation, which got us into this travesty that we're living in now of politics and everything else, that is directly from the 80s me generation.
Yeah.
It's all about me and my family and what's in my yard. You and your family and what's in your yard. And that was a mentality that went through the 80s, and I lived through it. And I think going forward, we are going to realize that we're going to heal ourselves. And then in feeling more comfortable with who we are, we can be part of a larger community that then we can serve that community. And when that community feels served, it will eventually serve us back. We're not there yet, but idealistically, that's sort of, I think, the energetic goal of what humanity is intended for.
What a beautiful note possibly to leave this particular conversation on. What a lovely future you detail there.
Yeah. Do the work. Be insightful. Take a moment. Reflect. Do it in the shower. Do it on your downtime. Try to meditate. If you don't meditate and you have problems with it, then tweak the way you're doing it a little bit. And so just sit and watch a candle for 5 minutes. No music. Sit with your body upright and just stare at a candle. Watch it flicker for 5 minutes. And whatever thoughts you have, pretend that there's a big white cloud above your head and suspend any of those thoughts running around your head of money or work or jobs or stress or strain, and just suspend all those thoughts up in that white cloud. And while you do that, then stare at the candle and let your mind be blank. That's a nice precursor to people who say, oh, I don't know how to meditate. I'm unable. I'm nervous about it. Or I listen to these audio tapes and I'm too engrossed in the person talking. Start small. Yes. Start with yourself. Stare at a candle. Use one of the apps if you can and it suits you. That's wonderful. But it's really all about you and your mind being more quiet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. Great to talk to you as ever. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. You've been listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast with me, Scott Clover. Thanks to Carl Munson for the great discussion and to Corey Tutt for the music you're listening to. In my private practice, I encourage people to heal what holds you back and feel better in your body. If you need more help with that process, I'm available for healing sessions by phone internationally. Visit scottclover.com for more information. Be well, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and solely as a self-help tool for your own use. I'm not providing medical, psychological, or nutrition therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and/or mental health provider about your specific health situation. For my full disclaimer, please go to scottclover.com/disclaimer.